everybody. I'm David Zier. You're watching On the Right Side from the America First Warehouse. Special thanks to Joe the Box. Go to America First WH on X to follow us every Wednesday here at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm on assignment with Real America's Voice News down in Washington, D.C. And it's been such an incredible run. I've been in 14 states over the last 7 weeks. And man, it has been cold everywhere. It is cold everywhere. Steve Levy, a former county executive, New York State Assemblyman, Democrat turned Republican, fiscal conservative, couldn't be with us today. So I'm going to quarterback the show here. In this journey this year and the new year started out in Minneapolis, where we got assaulted in a sea of 30,000 protesters, and they tried to basically kill us. They were trying to break our windows on our van. They surrounded us in Powderhorn Park, acting like animals, throwing a drink in my cameraman's face in a restaurant for no reason. This ring-nosed wildebeest woman with blue hair in front of her children came out of nowhere and assaulted him. So that's what's going on. But things have calmed down a little there because Tom Homan did such a great job. And there's 1.6 million more targets of ICE nationwide, at least 50% of them with violent criminal records, I believe. So it's been a bull run. I've been in the Department of War, U.S. Space Command, Spacecom. I interviewed General Stephen Whiting weeks ago about the threats of a terrestrial-based laser from China that can knock down our satellites in lower orbits, maybe. And then I was with Pete Hegseth traveling to Rhode Island to General Dynamics Electric Boat Division, where we make the Columbia-class submarines in a new era of Trump's executive orders for defense acquisitions at speed and scale to our warfighters. These guys aren't playing around. I also went to Bath Iron Works in Maine, where we make our guided missile destroyers, the DDG Aegis class guided missile destroyers that can hold like 95 Tomahawks and these Aegis defense systems. They're just amazing ships, and they're probably going to start the Trump class battleships up there, which might have direct energy laser weapons, maybe railgun technology. We'll see where all that goes. But 2 weeks ago, I had this an amazing experience. Trump has these 4 executive orders on nuclear power to get these SMRs to the marketplace and to our DOW, our Department of War. And they're these 5 megawatt on average SMR, small modular reactors, HTGRs, high temperature gas cooled reactors cooled by helium. And I participated in the world's first airlift of a nuclear reactor from March Air Force Base in California, traveling with the Energy Secretary and the Undersecretary of War, Mike Duffy, to Hill Air Force Base in Utah, where we're testing these things. And the reason why this is important is because we have the America 250 celebration coming up. And these SMRs weren't supposed to be ready for years. Looks like they're going to be operational in about 18 months. And 3 of the 10 in the marketplace that are being tested now, including the one we transported from Valor Atomics, a young guy, he's only at 25, the CEO of this company, of this nuclear reactor, is that 3 of the 10 that are coming into the government for testing may be critical by our 250th anniversary, changing the game. These 5 megawatt reactors can be installed in the ground or in a factory, powering AI off the grid. We can open a base up, like say in Africa on the ground, potentially, and string 3 or 4 or 5 of them together, and each one powers 5,000 homes worth of energy. And you could be off the grid in a foreign country. We could take our bases off the grid in the United States, protecting them from certain types of electronic attacks and other, where we're not dependent on the grid. Because right now we can't accommodate, just like when the electric cars were coming out, we couldn't accommodate all these electric cars. The power grid needed to double its scope or triple its scope. Same with AI technology and other types of manufacturing that's going to take place. And this is an era of clean energy that Trump is pushing. And it's really important because it's going to change the game for our strategic energy dominance out there. I'll bring you more about that as we go forward. But the other day, I was at Reagan Airport, DCA, Ronald Reagan Airport here in Washington, D.C., where I was with the Freedom 250 bunch and Monica Crowley, ambassador in the United States, chief of protocol. with this Freedom plane. It's a converted 737. And just like I covered the North Carolina event, the mobile museum launch of Freedom 250, these 6 semi trucks with interactive museums out there that started touring the country, coming to schools, really cool exhibits, AI, George Washington coming to life, founding documents in there, and all kinds of stuff. This Freedom plane, the 737, took off in front of us and on its way to Kansas City, Missouri. It's going to tour like Seattle, Dearborn, Houston, LA, other cities. A lot of them were liberal cities. I wonder if Trump had that in mind, trying to get these people to be a little bit more patriotic. But on this plane is visiting 8 cities are founding documents, originals, an original engraving of the Declaration of Independence. Another one, which was the Treaty of Paris, the original Treaty of Paris signed in 1783, foreign countries that helped us win the war against Britain, France, the Dutch, and others. That helped delineate the boundaries of the United States from the Canadian border. And it was really just a spectacular event. 9 documents from the National Archives. I interviewed Jim Byron, the head of the National Archives. You got to take your kids to one of these stops. They're free. We can educate Americans and appreciate America once again, which is really a tough thing to do. I was at 2 press briefings this week. One this morning, both with Pete Hegseth and Joint Chief of Staff Chairman Air Force General Dan Kane, summarizing what's going on in Iran right now. And I asked Pete Hegseth today about Hakeem Jeffries' incredible statement saying that we're going to lose the war while our active U.S. military men are in combat. And I asked Pete Hegseth, what kind of message does that send to the enemies when you have the House leader, the minority leadership in the United States criticizing the president? Not a good look. And then what does it do to the motivation of our troops? This guy's a jerk. He's got to rescind what he said. And Pete Hegseth responded to me and said, hey, he's disingenuous because he was in the briefings. He knows the scope and scale of this thing. He knows what we were doing. And he's just trying to hedge his bet. So in case something goes wrong over there, he could be like, see, I told you so. It's really crazy. But what's going on around the country, I'm going to get more into this press briefing and what's going on in Iran, which is just amazing. The first torpedo strike from a U.S. submarine since World War II against the Soleimani, an Iranian naval vessel. How apropos, off the coast of Sri Lanka in the Indian Ocean. Devastating footage came out earlier today, but our news agencies were swirling. I was following since like 2 a.m, local time here on the East Coast. What was the nature of what happened? And a Mark 48 torpedo, which just incredible stuff, took out this. And now Soleimani took out hundreds and killed and maimed hundreds, if not thousands, of U.S. troops with these liquid metal forming copper explosive IED type devices that when were detonated, maybe attached to 155 shells or other, could melt copper at about 4,000 degrees, and they would take shape as a spear and basically cut our convoys of our Hummers and other armored vehicles in half. And I took many of those soldiers, including a local guy to the warehouse, Chris Levy, who was a triple amputee. I took them to Congress to testify on conditions in Afghanistan and other. And I spent time with single, double, triple, and quadruple amputees, victims of some of these IEDs. And you know what? Screw them, because they deserve this. And it's some type of poetic justice that Trump is so on point. We took out the Soleimani along with 20 plus other ships in the Iranian Navy. Maybe they got to develop another, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Maybe they got to develop anyway. There's so much going on. The news cycle is just really crazy here. And of course, I spend time at Fort Bragg, the JIOP, the Joint Innovation Outpost, getting weapon systems into the hands of our 18th Airborne troops and our 82nd Airborne troops at speed and scale with private industry solutions in partnership with academia. And that's what's going on across the country. And I was on the ground last Friday in Georgia's 14th CD, MTG's former district, last week at Coosa Steel, Trump bringing 70,000 construction jobs to Georgia. I covered the rally there with Trump, and he's creating all these jobs, defense industry jobs in Georgia as well. A lot going on there, and I'll get into it. And then we had these incredible primaries last night. Looks like Dan Crenshaw is out. He was the only sitting House member in a primary yesterday who didn't have Trump's endorsement, and he's gone. I don't know what happened to him. Seems like he went off the reservation a bit. But I also covered the White House the other night, the protest outside. Man, these people are uninformed, especially about socialism and Iran. North Carolina's first CD also had a victory for Lori Buckout, who I just had on my show last week. I'm going to be releasing excerpts from that. She ran in a 4 or 5-way primary, and she doesn't have to go in a runoff right now. But the news services lit up overnight with these stories of this incredible Iranian naval vessel getting sunk in the Indian Ocean by our U.S. submarine. That was really the highlight here. And then I'm going to get into Ecuador, the Ecuadorian president in sync with the U.S. president, expanding anti-drug operations, 290 tons of drugs intercepted in 2024. In Ecuador, which is south of Colombia, with Colombia's south of Venezuela, all related, high violence rates, high murder rates, 34% increase, I think, in cocaine distribution and growth worldwide in the last year or two. So, stay tuned with us throughout. I'm David Zier, coming to you from Washington, D.C., and don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more.
Most people think they have options when searching for the best deals when they travel. But here's the shocking truth. 100% of the major travel agencies are owned by just 2 entities, Expedia and Booking Holdings. They claim to offer the lowest rates, but due to the hotel rate parity agreement, they all have the same pricing, limiting genuine competition. When you book through these sites, you act as your own travel agent, but the profits are going to organizations that don't support our patriot values. We cannot allow that to continue. So, we decided to make travel great again by starting a US-based travel membership platform, mypatriottravel.com. We are patriots helping patriots. Together, we can disrupt the travel industry by not spending our hard-earned dollars supporting the radical left. For just $29.99 per month, you gain access to true wholesale rates on travel, saving you on average 35% and up to 65%. Book as often as you like, with no limits. Keep your hard-earned dollars in your pocket and spend them on things you need and want to support. Go to mypatriottravel.com/TAFW and grab your membership today. mypatriottravel.com/TAFW, making travel great again.
Are you a true American? Then it's time to get connected. Download the America First Media and Television app and stay up to date with real news, bold voices, and live events from the America First Warehouse. From national broadcasts and exclusive shows to comedy nights, concerts, and special events. It's all right at your fingertips. No filters, no spin, just America First. Download the America First Media and Television app today and be part of the movement.
I'm sure you guys remember the platinum single, Justice for All, with Donald Trump and the J6 Prison Choir. Well, get ready for round 2. We're coming out with Anthem of the Free with High Res and the J6 Prison Choir. It's coming out now. It's pre-sale until December 19th when it drops. Get yours on all platforms, Google Play, Apple iTunes. Get it. It's going to be hot.
Justice for all voices ring, the anthem of the free.
It's me, Joe the Box, the America First Warehouse, most patriotic venue in all the land.
The America First Warehouse, a beacon for all to see, a symbol of unity. For the patriots of America, we stand tall and free. In the America First Warehouse, where our hearts will always be.
Welcome back. You're watching On the Right Side podcast with David Zier and Steve Levy. Steve is out today, but I am coming to you from Washington, D.C. I've been covering the White House and the Pentagon and other type of venues all over the United States for the last 2 months, and it has been an incredible front row to history. I wanted to talk about what's going on in Iran a little bit. You know, Iran doubled down and said they can develop 11 bombs. So I think they did a Hail Mary and they don't care anymore. They just wanted to say, we're going to dig in our heels and fight this thing out. I don't know why they would do that, but it looks like we're going to have total air superiority and dismantling their air defenses within a week, according to what Pete Hegseth said to us this morning at the Pentagon. But Iran came out with these doubling down on this, but so far 50,000 troops, 200 fighter aircraft, 2 aircraft carriers, B-1, B-2, B-52s, tankers, support aircraft, and the Israeli Air Force just decimating Iran's defenses. And we have decimated and sunk 20 ships of the Iranian Navy and destroyed a submarine from them, as well, as CENTCOM said yesterday, Central Command. And he's saying that Iran has launched 500 ballistic missiles and 2,000 drones. The first day attacks on Saturday, February 28th, doubled the scale of 2003's shock and awe campaign and was 7 times more powerful than the June 25th Iran bombings. I was at the White House for that. Trump held it very closely to the vest. I was on the South Lawn where he departed for Bedminster. No one knew he gave the order to bomb Iran at that point. It was like Friday afternoon, but we thought something was up because he didn't stop and gaggle with the press and he was very quiet. And then Saturday night, I was about to come home and they said, get back to the White House because the bombings took place, an extraordinary event, 30, 40-hour missions for our B-2 bombers. We did it again with our B-2s, flawless stuff. But the UK scored its first combat kill of F-35 from an F-35. They have like 37 F-35s from the US. I think they intend to get 137 of them. They took out a drone yesterday in that theater of combat, and other countries getting involved. We've degraded Iran's air defenses and taken out hundreds of ballistic missile launchers, and their volume is down 86% of ballistic missile launchers. And again, we may have that air superiority by the end of the week. But Qatar is also saying that they knocked down many drones and maybe 2 Iranian jets as well. So this is an incredible historic turn for the United States here. And, you know, what's going on the ground there is really important because, you know, people are asking, what's the end game? The end game, you know, really isn't known. And as Hegseth told us the other day in the press briefer, and again today, we're not going to tell you what our plans are. And, you know, people asked in the media today in the room about, you know, are we going to have boots on the ground? And they're saying, listen, we're going to take this step by step. We're going to first get air superiority where we can do whatever we want. And what role of support the U.S. will provide on the ground there is still a question mark. Don't think we're going to be doing what we did in Iraq with with thousands of rapid deployment troops that wanted to come in through Turkey, which were denied. And then from the south, it took like 2 weeks to get in there. And then when we disbanded the Ba'ath Party in Iraq, they bled into the countryside, became the Fedayeen, and they created a security crisis. And then Saddam Hussein emptied the jails. We probably should have let the Ba'ath Party keep their weapons and made a deal for them to go after Saddam Hussein. But that's past history. But what Hegseth said is we're not Paul Bremer and we're not nation building in Iran. Now, it's up to them to take control at some point on the ground. And there are movements, but you have to understand the dynamics. And I haven't been to Iran, but I've been following it for some time. And I interviewed members of the National Council for Resistance of Iran, which are really like the inherent rightful leaders of Iran going forward, because they're the MEK. And there's like socialist, Marxist leaning groups, which date back to the Shah, persecuted by the Shah, college professors, college students, and they orchestrated the revolution in Iran in 1979 against the Shah. And it was the mullahs who hijacked it from them, and the clerics, the Muslim clerics and the Shiites, hijacked it from under the MEK. So they sided with Iraq in the Iraq-Iran war. A lot of them fled the country, but they stayed on the ground as resistance, and they've been persecuted. And Maryam Rajavi, who was the wife of the exiled leader, is now married to another co-leader of the NCRI, which is the MEK, basically, and they're like more socialist, but they have a provisional government ready to take place inside Iran at the right time, I believe. Now, I think Trump and Israel, I'm not sure about this, but maybe they want Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah, to take over there. But I don't think he has the ground game. I don't think the people of Iran, according to what I've been told by many sources, they don't want to be reminded of the days of the Shah of Iran, even though he was a strong U.S. ally. And it looks like the MEK, the Mujahideen, the People's Mujahideen of Iran, are going to be able to take control of the government. Maybe it'll be a coalition of a few different groups. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's too early to say what exactly we are going to do in that capacity. There's so much going on out there, and also what's timely with Ecuador. Now, Trump's expanding the anti-drug operations into Ecuador, which is south of Colombia, which has an all-time high of cocaine exports. Worldwide cocaine exports, I think, are up about 30 or 40% in the last year or two. And they're, basically cooperated with Venezuela because Venezuela destroyed the oil industry. They nationalized the oil industry. I think that was in 2013. I'm not sure. I think it was. And when they nationalized the oil industry down there, they're not putting the output out of oil like they're supposed to. And we used to refine all of the refineries on the Gulf in the United States were the ones who processed their oil. So they stopped that under Chavez. And then Maduro takes over and he decimates the industry that's only putting out, I think, about 15% of the capacity of what they're capable of putting out. So he destroys the economy. Like 85% of the oil, I think, was being purchased by China. But it became an agrarian economy, relying on cocaine transport from Colombia through Venezuela. And that's how the regime, Nicolas Maduro, who stole the election down there, I think was financially being supported, in addition to cooperation with Iran and Russia and China. Russian defense systems. I was at Fort Bragg for Melania Trump and Donald Trump. President Trump congratulating 18th and 82nd Airborne troops a few weeks ago. Man, these troops love him. They really love him. And that operation was one of those high-tech, most sophisticated operations in the history of the world. Not only was 160 aircraft, but it was the largest helicopter assault in world history with 35 choppers. We were in and out of there within a couple of hours from the start of the mission to its end, but we were in and out of there basically in like half an hour, I think. And we used this thing called a discombobulator, as Trump calls it, taking out their S-3 or 400 Soviet defense systems. They didn't know we were there. They didn't know we were there. And we led this assault. That helicopter pilot, the brave one that was honored at the State of the Union, took gunfire to his legs and was injured. But these guys were amazing. The Night Stalkers, the 160th Black Hawk pilots were just incredible, along with 82nd Airborne and other. But very few people really understand. Like, people make fun of Space Force. Space Command and Space Force. It's so critical. It's probably the most important branch now, just like what we're doing from the seabed with our Navy all the way up to space. Space Command and Space Force, which mans Space Command, which is a joint JSOC operation working with all of the services. Basically, doing the cyber security and I think some intelligence and a very critical component of all of these operations. And people want to know, how did JSOC come about? Well, if you remember the Iranian Revolution in '79, when our hostages were taken for 444 days, one of the rescue missions was Desert One, Operation Desert One, where we have to have these FARPs, a forward air refueling post. And I think the C-130 was refueling, or our helicopters were refueling, if not both. I don't know for sure. But they had these fuel bladders and they didn't have the right filters for the sand on these helicopters and I think the C-130s, but they collided. They collided, and at one of these refueling posts, and a bunch of our soldiers died. And there were services competing with each other, and that was the problem. And then in Grenada, we dropped 5 or 6 Navy SEALs out of the back of a C-130 into turbulent seas because there wasn't coordination, I think, between maybe the Air Force and the Army. I forgot which branches, but they drowned. A bunch of Navy SEALs drowned. We dropped, I think, a Boston whaler, and these troops in the October 25th, I think, 1983 invasion of Grenada. So I spoke to Robert Gormley, who wrote the book Combat Swimmer about 20 years ago, and he explained to me how he went before Congress and they developed JSOC because of this competition on the services. Now we can, like sheep dip guys, we can get them to cooperate with each other across the services and have these precision coordinated attacks that can involve 4 or 5 branches of the military at a time. Space Force being the newest one. So what's going on is unprecedented in American history. This raid in Venezuela and these attacks on Iran could never have taken place under any other president because Trump is just getting stuff and getting our act together. We have been acting on a wartime footing for some time now in the United States. And we're acting like we're at war. Again, we've got threats from China. The Russians might have a nuclear weapon in space that violates all the treaties. We're worried about hunter-killer satellites from the Chicom. We're worried about robot arms and munitions being shot from other satellites to take out our stuff. And the Chinese plan on putting 100,000 orbits into satellite. Now, to give you an idea, Starlink is about 10,000 satellites, I think. But this is like 100,000 the Chinese want to put up. And they may beat us to the moon. We've been there 6 times. Our 7th mission is still 2 years away. There's water on the south pole of the moon, and they can extract oxygen from that, maybe rare minerals. I think they're planning on putting a moon base on the moon. So something to pay really close attention to. Artemis was put off, but it was put off for good reason. And I could talk about Jared Isaacman, the new NASA commissioner. We'll be right back with more. You're watching On the Right Side on Real America's Voice News. And thank you for joining us today. Go to America First WH on X and join up today. Thanks.
You noticed your money just doesn't stretch like it used to? Your paycheck feels lighter and your savings aren't growing. The culprits? Inflation and increased money supply. They've both been quietly eating away at your purchasing power for years. Today, the dollar's value has dropped significantly. You feel it every time you spend money on goods and services. Back in 1965, $1 or an ounce of silver could buy you a gallon of milk. Fast forward to today. That same dollar barely buys a couple of coffee creamers, while an ounce of silver would get you 8 gallons of milk. Gold and silver have held their value for centuries. If you had 2,500 ounces of silver back in 1965, you could buy a brand new Ford Mustang. Today, 2,500 ounces of silver would buy you 2 Mustangs. Similarly, in the year 2000, 628 ounces of gold would buy a new $170,000 home. Today, 628 ounces would buy you a $2,500,000 home. The problem? 95% of Americans don't own physical gold or silver. They think it's too complicated and too expensive, but it doesn't have to be. We offer a membership program that allows you to buy gold or silver with as little as $1. You can buy fractional amounts, safely vault them, or have them delivered to your doorstep, and you can liquidate them whenever you want at the highest buyback price in the industry. Ready to protect your wealth and keep your purchasing power? Scan the QR code or go to tafw.soundmoney.com to learn more.
If the vote count is accurate, then how come the number of voters is different? And if it's not accurate, then why was it certified? We are suing Letitia James and the New York State Board of Elections for a conspiracy against fundamental rights. This is not about who won. It's not about what party. It's about the fact that they don't care about your rights.
All right, live from Studio 6B on a Friday night, live at the America First Warehouse. Live at the America First Warehouse on a Friday, Real America's Voice, all across the country, 103.9 LI News Radio, all across your radio, Suffolk County, Long Island.
It's me, Joe the Box. And I'm John the Blanket with the America First Podcast.
That's what I'm talking about. The Fred Rubino Podcast coming to you from the America First Warehouse.
Welcome back to the America First Warehouse. What we're still doing? Fighting!
every day, all day long.
Welcome to the Patriots Podcast. Good evening, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the On the Right Side podcast here at the America First Warehouse in Long Island, New York.
Shane Jenkins here with another episode of Liberty's Cage.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our podcast, Red, Right, and True.
We are streaming live on America First Media and Television app.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Downey Jr. podcast. Be free, stay free.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're watching On the Right Side with David Zier and Steve Levy. Again, Steve Levy is out today. I'm with Real America's Voice News, and go download the app today. My show Breaking Point airs 8 a.m. on Saturdays. I've got great stuff. I've got interviews with protesters who were putting their hands on me in front of the White House the other night. I've got great stuff, including my questions to Pete Hegseth this morning at the Pentagon. But, you know, there's been a lot of security concerns for American citizens and interest abroad in the Middle East. And since Saturday, a friend of mine, Dylan Johnson from the campaign when Trump was running, was a really great guy, worked with him for Real America's Voice News. He was the Assistant Secretary of State appointed recently and approved by Congress, I believe. And he came out with a memo called Ensuring the Safety of American Citizens in the Middle East about an hour ago. So this is right off the press. And he said since Saturday, over 17,500 American citizens have safely returned to the U.S. from the Middle East, with over 8,500 U.S. American citizens returning to the U.S. yesterday alone. Many more Americans have left the Middle East to other countries in Europe and Asia, or safely departed from the Middle East, but are still in transit back to the United States. And they've assisted with the State Department's 24/7 task force. We've assisted nearly 6,500 Americans abroad, including offering security guidance and travel assistance. If you know anybody who's in the Gulf states or is in that region, now we've moved 90% of our troops outside of the severe of the ballistic missile attacks already, but we did have an attack in Saudi Arabia on a CIA building that nobody was in or was injured. There was also reports of missile hitting Turkey. So there are some security concerns of this growing into a wider conflict. Probably not too much, but it could. And if you know anybody who needs to get out of there, who doesn't have help, have them call 1-202-501-4444, 1-202-501-4444. And it's really important here. And I just wanted to talk about the mission, the Artemis mission, which was put off. Now, the timeline to get back to the moon isn't really changing. It's still like 2027 or 2028. But we had these test flights that were canceled. And I was listening to Jared Isaacman. I met him at the White House and when he was appointed by Trump a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago. He's a brilliant guy. He's a young guy. And you know, he's not like your typical politician running NASA. He seems to be really smart. I don't know if he, wonky on science and stuff. And he was basically describing that the reason why we're having these test failures on the launch pad, with SpaceX and Starship and Amazon's Blue Origin or Merritt Island between Cape Canaveral and the coast of Florida, and all these groups that can participate, is we're only doing these test launches like every 3 years. And our expertise and knowledge goes down in that time. It's like it plateaus. So unless you're working on this stuff constantly, you can't get it right. There's leaks, there's problems with helium and other things. So I think what they're looking to do is later, like a year from now, start to increase. My timeline might be up, but they're going to start to increase the testing and all get on the same page so they can address problems. Because you can't just test something and a year later go back to it and then launch it and expect a good result. That's not how space exploration works. So Jared Isaacman had a really good way of putting it. And my son runs Payload magazine and Tectonic magazine, Defense Industry and Space Technology. And he's not he's not a journalist, but he was explaining to me, some of this testing that's going on with SpaceX and Blue Origin and why we have these test failures going on. And NASA, of course, been on the hot seat, but they're working closely with private sector interest and they're speeding it up. And there's spaceports all around the globe. I mean, I interviewed a woman representing the Mojave Desert Space Port by Edwards Air Force Base in California, just east of there, I believe. And they're doing incredible things in these private spaceports. A big one opening up in Uruguay. Hundreds of companies involved in cooperation with the U.S. government. This Mojave Spaceport just tested the XB-1 boom plane, which broke the sound barrier with no noise. It's going to change commercial and military and civilian aviation forever. They also, I believe, tested a hypersonic plane recently, which is pretty incredible about that. But I wanted to get back to Ecuador, right? The U.S. Southern Command announced that U.S. forces launched joint operations. I just got the memo here from the Department of War about 2 hours ago with Ecuador. And they're calling Ecuador narco traffickers, designated terrorist organizations inside Ecuador. And Southcom leader, General, which is U.S. Southern Command, General Francis L. Donovan, met with Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa, a U.S. ally, and other senior defense officials in Quito, Ecuador. And in Ecuador, more than 290 tons of drugs were seized in 2024, 30% higher than the year before. Violence is through the roof, almost 7,000 deaths in 2024, with a homicide rate of almost 40 per 100,000 inhabitants, quintupling in its nature in the last 5 years. And the surge in trafficking coincides with a deterioration in security. And it's really a big problem there. And there's no specific details out yet as to what those operations are going to look like, either inside Ecuador or more ship strikes and boat strikes. But Southcom did announce recently, today, I believe, that this expansion of U.S. strikes were going to be against boats, at least in the region, and other entities suspected of carrying drugs. But we haven't officially announced operations inside of Ecuador. But really important stuff. And I just got a memo from the Department of War about an hour ago that says Secretary of War Pete Hegseth will travel to Doral, Florida tomorrow to host the inaugural America's Counter-Cartel Conference at U.S. Southern Command headquarters in Florida. Like-minded regional defense and security leaders from the Caribbean, Central America, and South America will attend. Secretary Hegseth will also travel to Tampa, Florida to visit U.S. Central Command, which is running the operations in over 20 Arab countries, including what's going on in Iran. Incredible leadership going on and motivation. One thing I will tell you, I started covering the Pentagon in late November. There is an amazing attitude over there. They're done with DEI and dudes and dresses. I'll tell you that right now. And they're all on the same page. And while Hegseth told us that there is a big bureaucracy in the Pentagon, and there's no doubt there's 25,000 people. Look at the Bradley fighting vehicle. It took like 10 years of design changes to get to the field, and it did pretty well in the end. We actually took out more tanks than the M1 Abrams did in the first Gulf War with the Bradley, but it took a long time to get it right. The armament, the thickness of the armor, the mounted gun, and the TOW missile changed everything. The tube-launched optically tracked wire-guided missile that was put on several versions of the Bradley took out tons of armored vehicles in Iraq, I think in both conflicts in Iraq. But it's pretty amazing what's going on. And they went on further. The Department of War today saying narco-terrorism is a threat to the Western Hemisphere. For decades and across many administrations, narco-terrorists and cartel thugs have trafficked fentanyl and other deadly drugs across the borders, killing 100,000 Americans per year. And this organized crime ring is an extraordinary threat to the United States. So, it's kind of like Monroe Doctrine and other, but, I can't wait because the midterms don't look good for the Republicans. They just don't look good. The past 130, 150 poll releases have the Republicans losing in about 98% of those polls by 3 or 4, 5, 6 seats. We can only afford, right now, we only have a 1-seat majority. Trump's been traveling the country. I covered him in Iowa about 4 weeks ago. I covered him in Georgia, coming out in the 14th Congressional District. But there's a lot of toss-up races around the country. And he was in Corpus Christi. Brian Glenn from Real America's Voice was on the ground for that with our great cameraman, Brandon Jarvis. What's going on is that, things have to change. So when people do their tax returns in a month or two, they're going to see a significant difference. The average family is going to save $1,000 off the bat because of tax cuts. But what about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on tips up to $25,000, of your money. No tax on Social Security. Anyone up to like making $250,000 a year. That's major. All of that stuff. And the average mortgage is about $3,600 to $4,500 less per year right now. Interest rates below 6% for the first time in many years, about 5-6 years. It was 7.5% average under Joe Biden. It was 6.09% the other day, but it went down again to under 6%. Now, it's got to be in the 4.5-5 range to really make a difference, a big difference. But if you add all these things up, and especially with the SALT tax in New York State, where we have high property taxes, $10,000-$20,000 a year, not uncommon, you can write off up to $40,000 a year in taxes. They're going to put like $15,000-$20,000 back in the average family's homes in these blue areas, but they're going to put probably, I would say, between 3 and 10, maybe more thousand in the back of the average homeowner in the United States. And the average worker is going to save thousands of dollars, especially if you're a bartender or waitress and your husband's working overtime in a factory. You're going to save thousands of dollars on that alone. So my point is that, and we'll get into it a little in the last segment if we have time, things may heat up by the time the midterms come around, and it could be the saving grace for Donald Trump, especially if we have a successful war. But what I'm really waiting for, because I've asked Tom Homan about this and others, and I haven't seen really hard data on the crime numbers. They say, crime's down 20, 30, 40% in major cities, but I need specific data. Like from 2011 to 2017, there were 500,000 felonies committed in Texas, 4,000 murders, 7,000 rapes and kidnappings and stuff by illegal aliens. I want to see hard data, because when the American people see that 100,000 people a year aren't dying more, even though overdoses will going down in 2024, it's got to be drastically down because of Donald Trump. No encounters at the border for like 9 months. It's got to have an incredible impact on the crime numbers and the murder numbers and the assault numbers and the rape numbers and all the robberies and all the other stuff and drug overdoses nationwide. I can't wait for that to come out. I want to thank you guys for joining us today. I'm David Ziera. You're watching On the Right Side. I'll be back next week with Steve Levy, who is my co-host on the show. He couldn't be here today. And I want to give a shout out to Joe the Box. Go to the AmericaFirstWarehouse.com for the latest and greatest on what's going on at that incredible venue, the most patriotic venue in the United States. I'm David Ziera, Real America's Voice News. We'll be right back.
You've worked hard and saved, but inflation and increased money supply are eroding your buying power. Protect and grow your wealth with physical gold and silver. Sound Money. With a Sound Money wallet, your wealth stays in your control. Buy fractionally, vault securely, ship directly, and instantly liquidate your gold and silver at the highest buyback price in the industry. Real money, real ownership. Visit tafwsoundmoney.info or scan the QR code and start securing your financial future today.
The America First Ultra MAGA Store. For all your MAGA needs. We sell t-shirts, tumblers, flags, hats, sneakers, bumper stickers, and a whole lot more. The most patriotic America First retail store. The America First Ultra MAGA Store.
At the America First Warehouse. Live at the America First Warehouse on a Friday, Real America's Voice, all across the country, 103.9 LI News Radio, all across your radio, Suffolk County, Long Island. Glad you're in.
Corporate transfer. Fine professional, moving and storage, and inventory management.
First Warehouse was really the most patriotic venue that you can ever imagine. We wanted to build something for people to be able to come to and feel so comfortable and so relaxed, because there is nothing out there like it. We give an opportunity for people to really feel good about themselves and about this great country.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. I'm David Zier from Real America's Voice News, and you're watching On the Right Side. We're usually in the America First warehouse. I'm on assignment in Washington, D.C. I've been crisscrossing the country, covering these incredible historic events. Just a spectacular time. I've been in politics for 40 years. I don't remember more of a time where more is getting done than under Donald Trump. I can say that honestly. You know, I've been coming to DC for 50 years. I met Jimmy Carter and Vice President Walter Mondale back in like 1977 here at the White House Easter Roll. And I've been coming to DC my whole life. And I haven't seen this much energy since the first Trump administration. But now it's like on steroids. And you can't blink your eyes. You can't turn your head for a minute. I was on the ground at the White House. We have an incredible team covering the White House. I cover on occasion, but our chief White House correspondent, Brian Glenn, and Benny Ray Harmony was a superstar, and Neil McCabe, a military veteran covering the White House. We have the best White House team in all of media. And it's really incredible what, covering, because you just can't blink. You can't blink. We had the Chancellor of Germany in there. We got all these people coming in and out, treaties being signed. I've covered so many historic events at the White House since this past summer, including that one big, beautiful bill signing on July 4th with the B-2 flyovers. Just amazing. People really knew what was in the one big, beautiful bill. Now, I understand the spending concerns, but, revenue is going to double and triple to the Treasury as long as we can keep the tariff money coming in and we can keep growing. We're growing at like 5% plus right now. It's unprecedented in modern history. I think the economy is going to take off like a rocket ship. Will it happen in time for the midterms? I don't know. But the other night, I covered these White House protests, right? So it's the protest du jour. I covered them in Minneapolis. I covered them in New York City. It's all the same group, indivisible Twin Cities. George Soros gave them $7.5 million that we know about. The Immigrant Defense Network. I just interviewed Peter Schweitzer at the America First Warehouse last week before last on his new book, The Invisible Coup. Million Chinese registered voters in the United States registered here are voting from China. They don't even live here. And then, the Mexican consulate has there's like dozens of them in the United States. Most countries have 2 or 3. And what's happening is that they're influencing the United States on illegal immigration. And of course, they get a lot of money sent back to Mexico. It's probably 10-20% of the economy. I think we should tax all Wells Fargo transactions back to Central America. Stop funding these countries that way on remittances back to their families from illegals here. But these protesters, they don't know what they're doing. So about 200 protesters came out the other night. I got into it, scrapped with them a little bit, because one guy from Jordan was putting his hands on me. But if the United States is so bad, including this guy from El Salvador, or at least engaged in some intelligent conversation, if it's so bad, why did they come here? Oh, we repress all the black people and everything. They're only here for financial gain. They don't love America. These people that are at these protests. We had the Black Alliance for Peace, and then they had the PSL, which is the People's Socialist and for Liberation, DC, and then they were there on behalf of the national group. And they were talking about how they hate capitalism. What the hell does that have to do with being involved in Iran? They're creating all these linkage, the Palestinians, all this other stuff. They did the same thing, if you remember, in the Gulf Wars, where, Bush said, no linkage. You can't link up every other issue to what's going on. What's happening at these protests is they are denouncing capitalism and claiming they're socialists, but they don't understand the dynamics, like I was talking about earlier in the show, in Iran. The socialists The Marxist-leaning groups were the ones who overthrew the Shah and led the revolution in 1979 in Iran. Remember that. The MEK, the People's Mujahideen, the NCRI, the National Council for the Resistance of Iran, with a government in exile for the past 46 years, led by now Maryam Rajavi, who's probably the rightful leader to go back for a provisional government inside Iran, which is probably going to happen, I would think. Is Reza Pahlavi going to be part of that? I don't know. I do know that people on the ground there have more of a connection with the MEK, who's been persecuted by the mullahs for many decades and killed a lot of them. But they don't even know that. So they're socialists. They're holding up signs of the Ayatollah. And they're praising the Ayatollah for wanting peace. Oh, we don't want nuclear weapons. Okay. Well, they walked into the meeting last week and said they can make 11 nuclear bombs, basically putting us on notice that they want to be creamed, you know? And they're just so stupid. They don't make any sense whatsoever. They don't know the history. And they've got all these platitudes and Trump's bad and all this stuff, but they don't know the history of what went inside. If they had a brain, they would support what we're doing in Iran. And I can understand not wanting to get into foreign wars and America first. Hegseth and Trump claim this is America first. We'll see where this goes. If it's a 5-week campaign and we're able to get out of there with our hides, that's great. If it gets a little more complicated, that's problematic. But, you know, where the people of Iran have been slaughtered by the mullahs for many years. So at least they shouldn't be talking at these protests about, you know, the socialists supporting the Supreme Council and the mullahs of the Shiite Council in Iran. They should be backing the MEK and want the people to take over the government. You know, it's so silly. But this past Sunday, my way to DC, I covered the Queens Village Republicans, where Joe the Box was the MC at this amazing event with Lara Logan, an incredible journalist, and along with Bruce Blakeman running for governor of New York. And I sat down and interviewed, you know, Greg Hack running in the 3rd Congressional District in a primary probably with Mike LaPetri, who's the Trump-endorsed candidate in that 3rd Congressional District. And they're going to square off. And Greg Hack's a lawyer, and he specializes in financial crimes and fraud and is big on Congress, not trading, insider trading, and others. Mike LaPetri, former assemblyman in New York, was the one who wrote the water bill when the cops made it illegal to throw water at the cops because people were standing by doing nothing while cops were being humiliated. And just like what happened with the snowballs and the ice thrown at the cops, where a couple were injured, and the DA Bragg didn't prosecute the 27-year-old gang member who was convicted of other crimes. Oh, it was just a snowball fight. No, it wasn't a snowball fight. This was assault on law enforcement officers. If I was the cops, I would just walk off the job and let the city rot until they freaking come to terms. Because what's going on is that Mamdani's been a benefactor of a cold winter, even though like 25, 30 homeless people have died under him because he doesn't want to break up the homeless encampments like Giuliani did, which would lead to more crime and everything. He's responsible for the deaths of homeless people now. But, you know, what's going on is the crime last year, felony assaults, like 77 and 78,000 New Yorkers victims of felony and misdemeanor assaults in New York. Rape was up 16% across the board. Now it's down significantly because it's been freezing. So just wait until the spring comes and we start seeing the rise in crime again in New York City here. But these Queens Village Republicans are so fired up. They are such an amazing bunch, kind of like the Whitestone Republicans. Now, they're not going to take a lot of these seats back in the New York State Assembly because it's so far to the left. It's like Che Guevara's running it. But there is a lot of momentum. And one thing Lee Zeldin did in running for governor was he did bring back the Republican Party and build up the GOP, which led to the victories for that 2 or 3 congressional seats in the last few elections. Now, up in the 3rd, you had a problem with George Santos, commits identity theft, right? The people up there, can we win the trust back? While Tom Suozzi, the Democrat, is sleeping in Congress during the State of the Union, can we get the votes back, right? Because you know, Santos had an incredible record voting for Trump. I was the first one to bring him on Real America's Voice years ago, about 7 years ago. But, you know, he betrayed the voters. People volunteered for him, the hundreds of people. My friend Nancy Marks, who ran 200 campaigns, was never accused of doing anything wrong, had to take a federal conspiracy charge when he filed his fake loans with the Federal Elections Commission. But he did a lot of good things, Santos. But the people up there in the third went back to the Democrat because they didn't trust the Republicans anymore. And there was a lot of history on this, on who's at fault and all this stuff. But I got to tell you, though, the Queens Village Republicans were just amazing. I interviewed so many great people, a Dominican woman running for Westchester legislature, a woman from Guyana, running for the legislature. The Republican Party isn't the same as what it was in the past. A lot of people in New York City, especially the Dominican community, I interviewed DVS 7.0, who just signed a deal. He's working with Real America's Voice. He's a incredible musician. I met him outside the Trump hush money trial years ago. Incredible guy, and his network. And Jesus A.O.K., another rapper. When Trump was on day 2 of the trial, I got embedded with him, with the Trump team, and I went up to the Harlem Bodega where Alba was brought up on murder charges for defending his business and his own life, which was later dropped by D.A. Bragg. There's a sea change going on in New York City. Now, is it enough? But it might be enough to elect a Republican over Kathy Hochul, because if somehow Bruce Blakeman can get 3 or 4% more, 5% more, he can bridge the gap and he can win this election. The problem is Kathy Hochul's got like $20 million or something like that. But Blakeman is an incredible county executive. He's a likable guy. He's got Trump's endorsement. He's tough on ice. He's good to the people in Nassau County. It's one of the safest counties in the United States, but he doesn't have the name recognition upstate, but kind of, because he's spending a lot of time up there. So we'll see what happens with that. But the Queens Village Republican 151st anniversary, emceed by Joe the Box, was a spectacular event. I'll be playing some of those interviews on Breaking Point this upcoming Saturday at 8 a.m. Download the Real America's Voice News app today and go to the AmericaFirstWarehouse.com. Check the AmericaFirstWarehouse.com. Check out all the incredible events coming up over there. And I want to thank everybody for giving us the opportunity to spread the word today. We'll see you next week with Steve Levy. I want to thank the production crew, Adam and Martin and Bill and everybody, and Dan upstairs in the control room. I'm in DC. They're bringing us in remotely today. Great work, guys. And we'll talk to you soon. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Warehouse, a beacon for all to see, a symbol of hope, a symbol of unity. For the patriots of America, we stand tall and free in the America First Warehouse, where our hearts will always be. The America First Warehouse, a beacon for all to see, a symbol of hope, a symbol of unity. For the patriots of America, we stand tall and free.